Welcome, everybody. Welcome to today's training opportunity on the collaborative response model software with our special guest, Mr. Curtis Hewson of Jigsaw Learning. Curtis is going to give us an overview of the newly updated CRM software platform and help us understand the main features of this software, how it works, and what it looks like in its new form. But before we launch into the Hangout on Air, a few reminders. Video is hosted by Wolf Creek Public Schools, but we could be having attendees from outside of our division join in to watch. The video will also be archived for future use as well and made available to Wolf Creek participants through our WolfTube accounts. So watch your email for the link, and I'll also provide Curtis with a link that he can share with outside participants as well, should he find that valuable. Curtis will be stopping to field questions at different times during the Hangout, and those questions could come from our live studio audience, but also if you've joined the Hangout on Air from the Google Plus page, if you look in the comments section, you'll find a link to a Google form that you can use to add comments, and we will look at that Google Sheet, and we will field the questions from there at different times when Curtis pauses to take those natural breaks for questions. So without further ado, please welcome Curtis, and I'll be turning over the control of the screen and the presentation to him now. Welcome, Curtis.
Great, thank you so much, Greg. Really appreciate this opportunity to share the upgrades for those who are utilizing the beta version of the software and just provide a little bit of a look. I'll be sharing my screen shortly to actually get into the program, but I do want to comment from the start that this webinar will focus primarily on a review of the functionality as the visual design has changed for the software, and then look from a school admin viewpoint or perspective for school admin permissions, how to go about establishing team boards, starting that collaborative team meeting, some of those first basics for getting started. Next week, when we meet on September 10th, we will be talking in regards to how to establish the leadership meetings, interventions, student data. We'll be diving a little bit deeper. But today, our focus will be on that basic functionality and getting started. And I look forward for questions. I'll be pausing at points as we go through. So I'm going to share the screen, and I'm hoping there, and if Greg, you could give me an indication that the screen is being shared. It looks to me that it is. Okay, I got the thumbs up. So you can see that we're on the collaborativeresponsemodel.ca landing page. What was previously a blue screen with logon information, you can see it is more enhanced. We will be continuing to add support updates and resources on the left-hand side. As new videos are added, other features that are made available, this will become a primary way for us to share what is being developed and work towards. You'll also notice some of the Twitter feed related to this work and other pieces as we continue to grow. Right now, I'm going to log into a demo space that has been created for the purpose of this webinar series. When we first log in, all users will be asked to sign a user agreement, even those users that were utilizing the system in its beta version last year. This end user agreement is intended to provide assurances that the software is being used in an appropriate manner. And just like any other piece of software app that you download, it'll ask to agree or disagree. Clicking disagree or closing this off will redirect us out of the system. We will agree. It will encourage for users who are not utilizing the single sign-on, it will ask to change a password. However, for Wolf Creek users, this step will not be involved as your single sign-on is established for use within the CRMS. So as you can see, it's a very different look, a lot of the same functionality. I am logged in as an admin user right now. I have 4 admin options which are available that would not be available for teacher and staff users that I'll explain here shortly. For those users, they would see the bottom 6 buttons. This is what we refer to as the dashboard. And the dashboard can be reduced and expanded to help increase the view space for other areas. You'll note some places in the program where having this enhanced screen view is going to be advantageous, but there will also be times where we need to pull that dashboard back out. 2 other pieces that I'll mention as far as the dashboard. You will note at the bottom a support network. Clicking on that, it will ask to contact district or proceed to the CRMS support. The district support would be for questions such as, I can't find where this particular student is, this staff member has not been uploaded. All of those issues pertaining exclusively to your school would be through a district support. Your district support liaison would receive that message. For items such as, I don't know how to start a meeting, I'd like to know how to update student data, we would proceed to the CRMS support. This support space is currently being developed and will include video, text, and other resources to assist our users. The other piece that you'll note here is to send feedback. We understand that there will be some areas of the program that will have glitches, will have things that are happening. It's important that these are shared so that we can continue to refine and ensure that the software is as robust and responsive as possible. This send feedback will direct us to a Google form to provide any information that you have, and we will respond to that. If you'd like a response for your feedback and we click yes, it will continue to a page to provide that information. If you collect no, this is all that that form will require. So heading back into the software, you'll note on the school home page there is an overview. Now this school that I've built, we have grade 7, 8, and 9. However, only grade 8 is currently in there. You'll also note that I'm looking currently at an academic focus. One of the features that's been built into this software as a result of feedback that we received is the ability to have different focuses within the school. As an admin, I've established that this school is focusing on academic and behavior. If I switch to behavior, you'll note that my percentages have changed, and I'll show you that on a team board here shortly. If I were to print my overview, it will give me a very quick clean printout of what my overview is for any user within the system. You'll also note that as a school, we can add resources, web links, and for admin, there is an admin space that would not be available for a teacher or staff user. All right, I can go into these in more depth in future webinars, but for now I'd like to get into some of the functionality. So I'm going to start with our user options. First off, for student profiles. You'll note when I go to student profiles, there's an opportunity to edit current student or students. We can do this to adjust multiple students. Now, for schools with automatic syncing with their Power School, it's important to note that we would not be needing to update or add or edit students or staff within the system. Now, we could utilize this space, for instance, to look at all of my grade 8 students, and I've added some popular names into my grade 8 roster here. We could use this space to have mass changes for their intervention focus areas or their intervention tiers. However, for syncing schools, districts such as Wolf Creek, we would not be changing grade level or teacher. We're working on a patch so that this is actually not available for those schools syncing here in time. So I'm going to go back, and we're going to drop down my students. So right now you can see that there is a display of 20 names for my students, or I can continue to show more. If I was to choose a greater number, it will show me those numbers. as I go along. I do not have 80 students within this school, but we'll go there as to whatever capacity I'd like. I can engage in an advanced student search where I can search by first name, last name, grades, or check boxes. We'll come back to this in a moment. I can also search simply by putting a piece of a student's name, first or last, into my search. So you can see LO brought me up Rob Lowe and Hans Solo. Easily able to access students at a quick functionality here. I'm also able to download a CSV file that shows all of my students' roster to easily manipulate in an Excel file, or in a CSV file, sorry, that looks similar to a CSV, or similar to an Excel. So I'm actually going to go into a student that I have added some notes. I have Michael Jackson. You can see that Michael is male, grade 8, and there is a student number there. I go into Mike, and here's his profile. As an admin, I can edit his basic demographics to change grade, teacher. Once again, this is not things that I would be doing as a synced school, but I can also establish that, yes, there's an IPP in place, and there's also a behavioral support plan in place for Michael. In Wolf Creek, these have been customized to fit Wolf Creek language and support plans for students. If I save this, you'll note that this has provided one more piece of information about Michael. Now, with Michael, I do have some general profile information in regards to his strengths and interests, learning preferences. We can add anything in here that may be valuable information in regards to students. We can also customize this. I will save that for a future webinar for School Admin in regards to how we can customize these boxes to meet our needs. We can see for Michael, currently he's meeting expectations Tier 1 in academic, Tier 3 in behavior, and I'll show you that on our boards in a moment. There's meeting records that have been established. In fact, we had a parent meeting just today for Michael. If I click on this, it'll open a PDF document where you can see that not only was the principal and teacher involved, we also had Mr. Jackson in attendance. You'll note there's one of our little bugs right there to be addressed. You can see that the description is Michael's having trouble relating to his peers. There's some bullying issues arising. We've established some actions that we'd like to put in place, and you can also see one functionality piece that has been added is not only to say who's responsible, but there's a completion date, and you'll also notice that the status is not yet completed. I'm going to speak to the actions element here very shortly, as it is a new piece of functionality within the system. So we're going to come back out into Michael and continue to look at his overall profile. Right now, there are no resources that have been added in relation to Michael. If I were to click New, I can add not only web links, but documents. I can also choose, if I am so inclined, to make a particular document confidential to whoever I choose, recognizing that School Admin have full access throughout the program. So I close this off. You'll see current interventions. I'm going to speak to the interventions a little bit more here in a moment and dive in much more in depth next week. Outstanding actions. So from that meeting, you noted that the principal is responsible for getting Michael involved in the peer support program, and teacher, Mary, will be checking in with Michael in 2 weeks. Now, the completion date for the principal was tomorrow. We're actually going to go in, and as the principal, oh, seems that we've frozen just a moment here. I'll come back to show you this piece in just a moment. So the actions that are in place are shown. There's also a student data section that I won't allude to this week. That will be a topic for future webinars. So here's the enhanced profile, and at this point I'd like to pause for any questions. I see that there are a couple, or one that's been posted up by Hannah, and I'm going to have Greg speak to this as it is particular to the Wolf Creek audience. Greg, could I hand this back to you, and I'm going to stop. I'm going to leave my screen on for when we come back to it.
Yeah, you bet. So you're referring to the question where Hannah asks, will the area be populated before we start with CRM, or is that an area that teachers can add the APP, IPP, and behavioral intervention plan as we go? Now, I'm wondering if Hannah is asking us, and she can add this to the chat window here, but is this, do you mean will that information be pre-populated? Like, will it pull, Curtis, will your system pull information about whether or not a student has one of those plans in place from our student information system from PowerSchool, or will the teachers have to go and click off those different areas to indicate that they have a one of those intervention processes in place?
So, good question. Thank you, Hannah, and thanks, Greg. So the system is intended so that we can indicate that there is one established. Now, I would suggest, and this has been discussed in a Wolf Creek context especially, this is not the area in the student resources where we would be posting an IPP. There are spaces that are established in Wolf Creek where an IPP itself would be placed. What is noted here is that there is one available so that we are aware. Now, I would suggest that a teacher can go and click off that that's added, but as you're going to see here in a moment, the system's really built so that when we're in a collaborative team meeting and working together, and we pull up Michael to talk about, for someone to mention, we should probably note there's an IPP in place. Well, we can open and add that. It's really meant to be intuitive as we're building profiles of students, be able to do that on an ongoing basis rather than every teacher going in and trying to individually update their 20, 30, 40 students.
But that submenu over on the left won't be pre-populated with information from our SIS. The first time our CRM teams meet, they will likely have to populate that by clicking on those boxes, correct?
Yes, and as they continue along. So what is pulled from the SIS is information such as student name, grade, teacher, student number, but other detailed information is not accessed through PowerSchool.
Absolutely.
The other piece that I will point, so the example of what kind of document would go in this area, let's say that Michael was on the spectrum and one of the documents that we wanted to place there was a PDF document of strategies that work for Mike, or maybe a web link to Autism Canada's website, so that some great resources that other teachers have found in the past can become just part of what's Michael's profile and what's tagged there to him. Now, that confidential piece has been built as there are other districts that are looking to use this platform in different ways. However, my understanding in a Wolf Creek context, it's going to be the work within the school to clearly define what information is housed within this system, what is housed within PowerSchool, and what is housed within DocuShare. Greg, can I back to you?
From within the CRM software, it's our understanding that you can put in links that we can still, if we did have an IPP for Michael, let's say, we could place in the link where that is housed in our secure document management system, click on the link, enter our credentials, and get to the IPP that way, right?
Yes, absolutely. And so there's a question from Janice. If things are tagged confidential, are they excluded when reports are printed? If they're tagged confidential, I would open up the documents, I would see it there, and if I was not a user that was identified, I could click on it and it would come up with a message that says, you are not, you have not been authorized to view this, please contact your school administrator. So that's what would state. Now, in the reports that we print, there may be a report that's available that says what documents or links are in place. but it would only show the list of documents, not the actual documents themselves. If I was to print the actual document, I would open that within the system. I hope that, can you give me a nod, Janice, if that, or a head shake if that addresses your question or not? Okay, I will come back then. Are there any other questions, Greg, that have arisen?
Not at the moment, Curtis. I think we can continue. So thanks for addressing those. Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to pull back up my screen then, and so that's our that's our student profile for Michael. But I'm now going to go, and one note that I will make is if I print, you'll note it says this feature is still being developed. Our report system that is built into the program, we're still setting up those reports. So rather than have a part of the system open that's still under construction, it is going to come up with that notes, and I'll show this also when we get into the data reports. Now we're going to go to Michael's team board just to show what this looks like. So I'm going to select the board. Right now there's only one board that Michael is currently on, grade 8 behavior. I'll continue. Oh, and there are my grade 8 students. So you'll note here, out of the grade 8s that I've placed, it not only shows their tier that they are placed at, it'll also indicate the percentage of students at this grade 8 level of where they are. You'll also notice colors for students. Those are their entry levels. So consistent with a collaborative response model philosophy, this student entry color indicates where students were at when they came into this particular grade level. You can see here, and we'll go right to John's profile. You'll note it's green here. John, for his behavior, was meeting expectations. So I'm going to back up. So what that's showing is meeting expectations where Mel, as a red, came in not yet meeting expectation. It is our intention to color code these as well in the next iteration of the program, in the next upgrade, so that those align. But that's what those colors are indicating for us. Okay, within our board, there is some unique functionality that has been built in as well, so that we can collapse certain areas to allow for more students to be displayed. As you'll note here, we do not have an exceptional amount of students. If this board was populated with 50 to 100 students, we would probably opt to go with a different visualization than the pictures, but we could also shrink down areas as we're discussing certain cohorts of student. I see one question that comes up, are we able to change the colors to match our pyramid of interventions? Yes, absolutely. I'm going to show you that actually momentarily. Let's go there. So we're going to go to the team boards. So in team boards, you'll note that I can add a team board, and the one that I've developed is available. Why don't I go to the one that I've developed, and we're going to go to Edit. I click on my pencil icon. You can see here the students that are on this board, and in fact, I have 4 grade 8 students, Darth, Luke, Han, and Princess Leia, who are not on the board. I'm going to add them. I'm going to select all 4. I'm utilizing a control click to highlight all 4. I'm going to bring them over. And in fact, I'm going to change to name only. Or I'm going to pull name and data, actually, at this point. And I'm going to change the visualization to one that's horizontal. And let's go take a look at that team board now. So we can see that this has changed for us, and that we also have other students, Darth, Han, Luke. They're arranged alphabetically there. Now, the question had specifically to do with, can we change the colors? Yes, we can. That is administration. Under configuring our school, if we go into our intervention tiers and edit these, and in fact, I'd like to make tier 1 brown. That coordinates with what we have established at our school. I save, back into my team boards, and we'll see that has been reflected. So there is customization not only for the colors, but the tier definitions and actually the number of tiers available is also customizable within the program. I'm coming back out to my team boards. I'm just going to change that back over as we continue. You'll note that it's very intuitive. Hopefully the system becomes quite easy to use. But what I do want to show is how do I go about, for instance, schools that have boards established, how do I go about moving students who are currently on my grade 7 board who should now be on my grade 8 board? Where students coming in and transferring in the school is automatic, their placement on boards is not. We always want that to be a professional conversation, so there's going to be two ways that'll be effective for school administration in establishing their boards. One strategy may be to simply change the name of our board so that students who were in grade 8 previously and are now in grade 9, we can change the name of this board to grade 9 and then make the adjustments that we need to for students coming or going. We'll back up. We also have the ability to go into our grade 8 board and, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to back up one, to go into editing our team board and add or remove students as we wish to continue to have these boards reflect what is established and being focused on in the school. So I do want to note then one important feature, and that is the collaborative team meeting. This is at the core, at the very heart of what this program or this software is intended to do. So right now, if I was to begin, if I go into my student profile, let's go back to Mike. There's Michael. And if I start a new meeting, you'll note that I can change my descriptor, and Wolf Creek has specific language that has been built in for specific team meetings that do already occur. This allows me in my defaults of parent meetings, learning support team meetings, outside agency, I can add students to this record so that if we were talking about a cohort of 5 or 6 students at one time, we can click on that, have one conversation, one set of actions that then would be dispersed through multiple profiles. However, this is not a collaborative team meeting, and you're going to see what those differences are. So I'm going to go back to the team boards. And the question coming here from Janice is, the available student list is updated through PowerSchool? Yes, it is. As you come into your school, you will be able to see students who were in grade 3 previously now being shown as grade 4, but their historical information will be listed. In fact, I'll show you very quickly under student profiles. Let's go into John Candy's. You would see a 2014-15 folder available to show what were the conversations and information that existed last year. However, if there were strengths and interests that we had added for John in the past, they would still be here because this is ongoing and updated on an ongoing basis year over year. I'm going to go back then to team boards and share that collaborative team meeting. So let's start a new collaborative team meeting. It's going to ask first, which board are we going to be talking about? Well, we have one, so let's talk about our grade 8s. So our grade 8s come up, we select our date, happening today, who's in attendance. I'm going to have these 3 teachers as well as one of our therapists is involved, and we're going to add another that Curtis is also joining in, and we're going to share some celebrations. Robert is doing great with his new class, and we can continue on. Again, this is consistent with a collaborative response model philosophy of identifying strengths and celebrations first. At this point, we have no other notes. I'm just going to put NA at this point, but this is one function that has been added so that we can come back at any time during our meeting to add to. That was previously not available, but is now. So as we start, we're going to save, and I'd like for you then to note the change that's going to happen for students. You'll note right now, if I scroll over Mel, I have only view profile. Once I save, you'll note up here that my team meeting is now active. up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see that Mel has a little, and all of the students have a little checkbox. Now, if we were talking and decide that Drew and Christy and John, they're doing great, we don't need to talk about them, this becomes a quick visual cue to say we've mentioned, but there's nothing really to talk about. However, we are going to go in and talk about Mike. We're going to click on him, and you'll notice that it asks us to add notes. We come in, and all of a sudden it's not asking who's here, it's not asking Tate. We've already identified that. We need to talk about Mike, and we're going to determine through the course of this that he's struggling with some identity issues. Okay, now when I go to click my intervention or action, if I had established interventions within my school, this will be the topic for next week, how to go about doing that. If they were established, I would have my full listing of interventions or supports that I can put in place. However, I don't. There is always the option for an other action. So actions that are not necessarily part of our pyramid or our structure, but still things that we would like to do. So one of the things that we're going to put in place for Michael is that we are going to set up a meeting with the counselor, and we're going to put our principal in charge of that with the completion date of tomorrow. We're also going to add one more action, and that action is set up a parent meeting. And let's make our teacher Mary, that's Michael's teacher in this situation, responsible, and let's have that set for next Friday. We're going to save, and it brings us back to our board. Michael is checked off. For the purpose of the webinar, I'm not going to do one more. However, if I continued to add notes for students, it would continue to keep the record until finally I'm ready to be done. You can see I've clicked this meeting active. If at any point I wanted to add some more celebrations, I could. Any other notes, I could. And I can continue to save. It will shrink back down. But right now I'm going to end this meeting. Am I sure? Yes, I am. Would I like to print? You bet. So it prints off, tells us who was in attendance, celebrations, general notes, and then individual students. So for Michael, we have the description that we had and the actions that were put in place. If we had talked about 3 more students, those 3 would continue to be listed below this. That becomes a product of the meeting that talks about the entire conversation. So if I go back, there is the option of tweeting out that our staff at our school just concluded. I can adjust this. Twitter accounts is a topic for another day. We're going to no thanks right now, and you'll note under collaborative team meetings, we have one in 2015-16 from grade 8 behavior, and it's listed there, where I can go back to edit, print it again, or as an admin, I can delete this meeting out of existence. Only admin have this functionality in place. If I go to my profiles and check out Mike, you'll note not only do we have a parent meeting that was held on this date, but a collaborative team meeting. I click on our collaborative team meeting, and it shows specifically for Michael what was discussed. In this case, if during this meeting 6 other students were talked about, that information would be distributed out to their individual profiles, but working through individually, I do not know which other students were talked about. This is only Michael's record from that meeting. This is one defining characteristic of the CRMS that we feel really makes it stand out from other pieces of software. So I'd like to return back to my home to show just 1 or 2 more features before being able to pause and realize that next week we will address some other issues. First off, the interventions I will not go through at this time. We'll come back to that next week, but the actions overview. If I am an admin, which I am, I can see all the actions that have been established at our school that are outstanding. Okay? At the conclusion of each meeting, anyone involved in the meeting receives an email that says, you just took part in this meeting. with a link to the PDF version of the meeting notes. Also, it will note you've been assigned the following actions, and it will list the actions that you've been assigned in that meeting. When you log back into the system, as school admin, I can see everything that's set up, not only for myself, but Mary, I can see, also has some things. As an individual user, I would only see my actions. So you can see demo principal is only seeing theirs. However, they get to see everyone's here now. As the principal, if I click on this action, you'll note it takes me here to say this is where the action was put into place. I can mark that it was completed. For get involved in the peer support program, set up, and I'm just going to add some comments that it's set up will begin on Monday, and save. You'll note then that this is no longer an outstanding action for either, and if I go into Michael, I can see that that action has been taken off of his outstanding list, but the really interesting thing now is if I go back to that parent meeting, I can see that that action was completed, and here's the comment that was put in place. So ongoing documents and recordings for us. I'll bring us back to home. I'm going to pause there for just a moment, knowing that we're reaching close to the end of the webinar, and address questions. I do see one from Hannah here that says, who will receive the minutes from the meeting? Will it be sent automatically to all in attendance? That's a great question, Hannah, and yes, it will. So what will happen is if Hannah was involved in this meeting and was clicked on the attendance record, as soon as we press save at the end, an email will be automatically sent out to anyone identified in attendance that said, you were just involved in the meeting, click here to view the PDF of that, and it'll take you directly to the PDF. Then it will also in there note, you have been assigned the following actions. Please click your actions overview, which will be hyperlinked to bring you back into the system to mark as complete. Now we are also building in functionality so that the day of an action being complete, before the day of the completion date, you'll get a reminder email that comes to you as well. One more way that the program helps to be responsive for those actions that are being put in place for students. All right, I'd like to turn back to Greg then for any other questions that may have arisen.
You bet. Two have come in on the Google form. One of them is that we do have situations where students are enrolled in multiple schools, right? So are students that are enrolled in multiple schools available on both schools' boards?
Currently, we haven't run into that situation. However, we will work on that on an individual basis and work with our tech department to ensure that not only is the student involved in both schools, but that actions, notes that are being put in place are updated in both, so that we don't have two separate records happening for the same student. However, that's going to be a customization piece that we'll work to build in. I would encourage in those situations to let Greg's department know, and we will work on establishing that for those particular situations.
One more is about the syncing process, right? And this one's about will students that enroll in the school kind of through the mid-year or at different times of the year, will they, well, I'll get Marisa and Robin to mute their microphone if you don't mind. Thank you. So will students that come into the school mid-year, how do they get added into the CRM software? If you could talk about the syncing process a little bit.
Yeah, so this is actually a really neat feature that we've built in now. So when an admin assistant registers a student and enters them into PowerSchool through the normal Wolf Creek process, or whatever the process is for the school, once they are put into the PowerSchool, our system syncs nightly at midnight with the system. So on a Tuesday, if the student is entered in, Wednesday morning, they will appear within the CRMS software. What will also happen is that the admin will receive a notification, and I'm not going to be able to show a specific example of that, as this is not a synced demo space that I have, but what will happen is admin will receive an email that says new students have been added to the software, and there will be a notification button right in their profile. It is an exclamation. When we click on the exclamation, it will say you have one new student added, and there will be a button that says resolve. When I click on resolve, it will allow that person to quickly put them onto any team board that they need to be placed on, and also indicate their entry level and intervention level at that point. For any new student coming in, it defaults automatically to meeting expectation, or sorry, to whatever has been set as the district's or school's default for the entry level and tiers. Within our basic program defaults, it will go to meeting expectations tier 1. However, Wolf Creek has customized that so that the entry levels are consistent with STAR language that's being placed on those assessments. And so it becomes a very easy way so that the student is automatically brought in on the following day into our system, and there is a one-step to ensure they're placed on the appropriate boards to correspond with the school. I hope that answered that question for us.
One more has come in from Janice there. So what about kids that leave? Do we have a window before they're removed or archived?
Yeah, this is a great question as well, Janice. So I'm going to switch back over to the screen, and we're going to go about archiving a student. So as a student leaves, if PowerSchool notes that they have left, again, that same notification will come up, and the administrator would be asked to once again resolve, and in this case, they would be provided with three options. The first one would be, would you like to delete? Now, I would suggest that in many circumstances, especially once profiles and information become built for students, deleting is likely not an option that would be wise, as all that information would be lost. However, one of the unique features of our system, and I'm going to go here for us now, under Add Edit Student, is our archival system. So right now, if I click in my Archive Students, I can see that my list is empty. Let's go archive a student. So we're going to go back to, and again, this is School Admin functionality. We're going to edit a student. Let's take Michael J. Fox. We're going to archive Michael J. Fox. Once a student is archived, they're added to this list. What it does is pulls Michael off of all of the boards, off of the active student roster. We should not be able to find Michael through our active roster anymore. He's been archived at this situation. However, if I go back in to my archived for the school, I can see Mike there. And if Michael either returns back into our school or shows up again on our sync records, we can easily add him back into that school and once again place him at the levels that we would like for him to be placed at, or the levels he may have been left off at. And we'll put him into grade 8 behavior. And once again, in our sync situation, our grade level and teacher would already be established. You'll note that there is opportunities for 2 teachers for those situations.
So another question that's come in from Hannah is around the fact that we have multiple CRM teams meeting on any given collaborative response model day, and she's wondering the difference between if there's a teacher leading one of these CRM discussions or one of our coaches who maybe doesn't have the admin sort of designation within the software. What's the key differences between the admin level access and then access for a teacher?
Yeah, great question, Hannah. So once again, and I will so you can see what I am seeing. All right, once again, you'll see the 4 School Admin buttons. If I'm a teacher leading a meeting, there's a couple different things we could consider. There's going to be circumstances within a school where a teacher is given admin responsibilities, because there are some people who have some responsibilities where we'd like them to be able to initiate some of these further features. Again, that's going to be a school by school conversation. However, for a teacher, you'll note here that a teacher can still initiate a collaborative team meeting. They can still initiate, if I go into a student, they can initiate any other kind of meeting. They can be involved, and it's quite possible that we could have a number of meetings happening simultaneously within the system and all being noted for what's being discussed and talked about. Okay, I think what I'll do then is just note one other piece in regards to the advanced search. The advanced search function within the program allows us to not only search meetings and interventions, but students as well. Again, an easy place where we can access multiple points of entry or data within our schools that we've established. I think at this point, if there's no other questions, there are other functionality pieces, such as the building of interventions within the school, such as some configurations that may be valuable. These may be items that you can explore, but we will continue, and I'll address those more specifically next meeting. In particular, the interventions, the student data that we're able to add, that you'll note here as well, and the leadership meeting as it pertains to school administration. So at this point, I'd like to come back to the large group and ask if there are any questions that people have at this point.
Just one there from Robin at Terrace Ridge School, just about historic data, right? So the team boards that were created in the previous iteration of the software from last year, right, while we were in proof of concept and pilot phase, are they going to transfer over into the new version?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the pieces that we've been working on in the back end is, because of the enhanced functionality, it wasn't a clean transition over. As previous boards and meetings came over, we had not indicated in our beta version that it had a particular focus, for example. We did not indicate actions assigned with completion dates. We had to build some back-end patches for that. So what we are putting in place right now is that all that data is going to carry over for schools and for students where that was being created in past year, including for schools that had uploaded pictures to go along with their students. One of the interesting things that you'll see is a meeting that you potentially held in March is going to come over. You'll be able to open it up, but what you'll see in the meeting records is that every action that was listed is listed as completed on June 30th. That was our one way to build a patch into the system. So all the other data is consistent there. Now, one of the things that I will reinforce as users get in and begin accessing the data, I would expect that there's going to be some pieces that we expected to be there that maybe weren't. There may be some things that have fallen through with this as we've brought it over. I would encourage you to let your tech and administration team know, let us know, and we can go about and ensure that we are filling in all of those patches and bringing back all of those pieces for us so that we can go back into our archives and pull that out for some of those situations where it's not automatically appearing. Again, it's just really important to share and let it be aware of where those instances are happening, and we will work to fix that. One of the notes that I did have on my list here is, in our previous version, for instance, we did not indicate gender for students. Where there was nowhere in our program where we would indicate male or female. We've tried to go in as we've brought students over to make those indications. However, there are going to be some female students listed in the program as male. As we find those, we'll just continue to make adjustments as we go.
Thanks, Curtis. And one of the things that Curtis wanted me to mention that's particular to the Wolf Creek context is that we've been working really hard with Curtis and his development team over the last few days, going back and forth with Curtis, updating us several times a day about the progress of bringing all of that information out of our student information system out of PowerSchool into the CRM systems. And Curtis has assured me it's close. It's getting closer every day, and we can almost guarantee that it'll be ready for our schools on our first CRM Friday, which is, of course, coming up on September 11th. So we'll keep you posted. We're working back and forth. Like I said, Curtis's development team is separated by a little bit of time and distance, but they're definitely working hard, and that progress is being made, and that process is on track to being completed and being ready to use for next Friday.
And so one note with that as well is when that access is opened up very shortly, it's important that if there are some missing pieces, if there are students that should be in a grade 8 demographic that are not, to let your district administration or your district liaison know as quickly as possible, and then we can work to get those all taken care of to ensure that this is functional and operational for you as you engage in your conversations about students.
Excellent. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there, Curtis. So thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you for the overview of the changes and our first look at, as a large organization, at the newly updated collaborative response model software. We look forward to another one of these opportunities next Thursday at 4 p.m. Where you'll go over some of the same information, I'm sure, but also examine some different features and some different functionality of the CRM software. So once again, thank you very much. We are privileged to partner with you. Thanks for your openness and willingness to work back and forth and have this product ready for our schools for their first collaborative response model meeting day next Friday. So.
Okay, and my thanks goes out to Wolf Creek Public Schools as well for this partnership, and excited with the program where it's at and where we continue to go. Again, hoping that it's one more piece to augment the great work that's happening in your schools. So thank you, everyone. I wish you all the best, and we'll continue to keep updating and sharing how to best maximize the software for the work that you do with kids every day. Thank you.
Excellent. And for our Wolf Creek audience still here, just watch your email for some updates with a link to this particular archived broadcast, and then some updates about what our next steps are, and some more information so that we can be ready and in a position to utilize this software with our schools on our first Collaborative Friday. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.